Quatermain!
I said be quiet.
Quatermain!
What is it, Brody?
I think we should get out of here!
We are talking Allan Quatermain and the Spear of Destiny. This one is directed by Mark Hamill. No, not that Mark Hamill. And Allan Quatermain, does that name sound familiar to you? It may well do. There have actually been a couple of adaptations of this character, but it's effectively a kind of lower budget, lesser known Indiana Jones kind of style character. And in a year where we had an Indiana Jones movie that was largely kind of disappointing for some, this one almost plays a little bit like a very, very low budget version of what those movies used to be like in some ways. What's the story? Well, Quatermain is effectively now a middle-aged guy who is just come out of prison for effectively reasons that will be explained in the movie. And he is tasked to try and locate an artifact, the Spear of Destiny, which he has come in contact with before. And this is now got in the hands of a kind of neo-Nazi who is planning to use this Spear of Destiny to create an army of Nazi zombies to kind of take over the world. So we have a globe-trotting adventure with different locations in Egypt, Argentina, for example, to try and stop him. What will happen? You will have to watch the movie and find out. So, let us discuss what I think works with this movie. Now, disclaimer, this is a low-budget indie movie. It's a very low-budget movie. I have to be honest with you, it kind of feels like a fan film. But we'll talk about what works. And the first thing I would say is this movie has ambition. As I've mentioned, it is a low-budget movie, but it doesn't stop it from having this kind of, globe-trotting adventure, as I've mentioned, in multiple countries with different locations. I thought maybe when I first watched this movie, it might be one of these movies that have kind of like green screens a lot, but it doesn't appear so. That they either kind of shot in kind of location to somewhere that doubles like a one of these locations, or they've created a kind of low budget set. So hats off for, I would say, definitely a old school kind of manner of filmmaking, and obviously the bags of ambition. And this movie, it's not a massive runtime, it's only just over an hour long, but it has somewhat of a, an intricate plot with kind of like, a bad guy who's got a plan, and, various kind of like misadventures are kind of along the way, gathering kind of new, kind of like helpers and things, and kind of like seeing different kind of contacts. So it very much follows that template set by Indiana Jones. So it's very, very ambitious for such a kind of a clearly small production, and I would imagine somewhat kind of an amateur one. But hats off. I think had this had more budget and maybe more experience, then obviously you would certainly expect this to kind of look and feel more like a kind of higher budget Hollywood production in some ways. But I think it's got the backbone certainly of one of these kind of old school kind of adventures, very much in the mould of the Indiana Jones movie. And I would say that it does try and capture, I mean, you could arguably say homage, to be polite, but it does try and capture some of the reverence, shall we say, from the Indiana Jones movie, albeit in a very, very low budget manner. But even some of the kind of, I mean, the way this guy, Allan Quatermain character is dressed, I mean, that's kind of how he was always been, looks very much like Indiana Jones. Some of the kind of the musical kind of, interludes kind of feel a little bit like the kind of John Williams score to certain degrees. The fact that we have these kind of literal tomb raiding and things like this, and various kind of like booby traps kind of ancient kind of tombs and stuff. It's right out of Indiana Jones, and we even have this kind of the Quatermain character be somewhat of a kind of a snarky kind of know-it-all, wide-eyed, Salah-like kind of like colleague that he's kind of going around with, damsel in distress, Nazi bad guy. It's really kind of like trying to emulate what I think works on with the Indiana Jones. There's even some kind of like sequences that are takes from the Indiana Jones film. There's actually quite an amusing kind of spin on the Cairo swordsman scene from the first movie, if you are familiar with what I mean there. Not exactly the same. They do something a little different with it, but I found it quite amusing, I have to say. So that was all pretty good. Some of the external shots, these kind of more location shooting, the kind of the outdoor stuff, I think is pretty good. I mean, obviously, it's clearly all filmed around the UK with a couple of kind of like shots of kind of B-roll here and there. But yeah, I've got to say, I think those kind of like establishing shots and B-roll, then kind of mixed in with kind of obviously clearly stuff which is filmed in like the UK forests and stuff. It's done fairly well. And again, we have to kind of mix in our kind of budgets with this as well, mix in kind of our what we expect. The movie also, as well as kind of, I would say, influences from Indiana Jones, it's very much feels like Indiana Jones meets James Bond. There's a certain James Bond aesthetic with it. There's like an MI5 style kind of intelligence agency that Quatermain is recruited by. They've got an M character, they've got a Q character that kind of gives him kind of gadgets and things. So it really does feel like a melding of those kind of two properties who, you know, established and older properties now that I think appeal to maybe an older audience. Maybe the kind of like the younger audience is, you know, more interested in kind of like video games or kind of Marvel or something. But those kind of those of you who like those, you know, older franchises, then maybe would consider kind of watching this to a certain degree. I kind of like some of our characters. I mean, they're a little on the broad side in regards to humour. I'll come on to that again. I quite like the guy who played kind of Quatermain. I think, you know, he had this kind of grumpy, kind of grouchy, certainly, you know, maybe channeling kind of Harrison Ford to a certain degree. I kind of quite liked, you know, him as a kind of a character. We don't get a huge amount of backstory. I'll touch on that again in just a second. But, you know, I thought he was an interesting character. And I do think I was entertained for the most part in this film because there's so much going on. You certainly can't accuse this movie of being boring because I mean, considering its short run time, it's packing a lot in there. So the production company, Hamill and his crew, have not tried to shy away from doing a movie purely like, for example, what The Asylum does is just have lots of conversations in rooms. And yes, there are there are those sequences that this movie does have, but you're still mixed in there with a degree of travel and kind of action sequences and kind of like peril. So I appreciated, as I say, the attempt here, which is on a very low budget, to have this kind of much more of an entertaining movie. Albeit probably even lower budget than an Asylum movie, if I'm honest. Which brings me to what doesn't work in this film. The budget is so low, it feels like a fan film. So that I can imagine being its major hurdle. I mean, for example, as I've mentioned, it doesn't look like they've used green screen for the most part, and they've used on location, or they've kind of made some makeshift sets. Now, one of these sets, for example, looks like it's meant to be like an Egyptian, inside an Egyptian kind of like pyramid or something, and the walls looks like they're made out of cardboard boxes that have been stacked. That's what it looks like. So it genuinely looks like a homemade movie. So, you know, bear that in mind. So it does look incredibly cheap. And some of the stuff I'm forgiving with. Because I understand doing this channel, doing a lot of B-movie reviews, budgetary restrictions are a thing that you just can't overcome with certain projects. But there are still instances where I feel maybe the movie could have been better. For example, we have these kind of Nazi zombies who turn up towards the end, and the makeup really just stops around the jawline. You know, we've just got like white kind of grease paint around the face, but there's nothing like on the neck or anything like that. So he kind of, that could have been done better. you didn't need a huge budget to kind of have neck painted or a little bit more kind of genuine looking like latex or something on these guys, rather than just looking like they got Halloween face paint. They're going to go trick or treating. That's kind of what it looks like. So there are genuine kind of like budgetary issues with this movie. I have to be honest with you as well. I think this movie really lacks in characterization. I mean, if you don't know who Allan Quatermain is, you're not going to have any idea really with this movie, because it really just goes in and doesn't give you any type of build up. He's just immediately kind of recruited into the kind of the this intelligence agency, and I didn't really feel like the movie gave you a lot of build up or character building. So you didn't get a sense of who this kind of character was before he's kind of recruited by like MI5 or whoever it's supposed to be. So yeah, I mean, you would have no idea. I mean, you get a little bit of droplets of information as the kind of the film progresses, but there's no kind of like character moments really prior to that. There's no kind of getting a chance to get to know the characters. And therefore the movie kind of feels somewhat kind of shallow, because you don't have any genuine kind of emotional kind of connection to it, which is partially down, I think, maybe to the tone of this film, which is my next point. The tone of this movie feels like it's not really concerned with having an adult connection with the audience. This movie feels like a pantomime. You know, we have cackling bad guys who are very, very over the top, kind of broad humour, goofy kind of characters like our bad guy or our Q character, things like this. Our kind of sidekick character that Quatermain kind of picks up on his way. It's very broad, very kind of juvenile kind of sense of humour. And I have to be honest with you, I don't think young people are going to be the target audience for this, because they either haven't heard of Allan Quatermain, they don't care about Allan Quatermain, or they even don't care about movies like Indiana Jones, because they're just too old now. So I would have thought this movie would have been better trying to serve an older audience and have that maybe the goofiness a little dialed down, because it's a very, very kind of goofy film in some ways, because of these very, very broad characters that we have. They're not developed at all, and they're just kind of playing like pantomime, which brings me on to the acting. The acting is, well, it's not good, let me just put it like that, but some of the characters fare maybe better than others. Quatermain probably being our best example, but our bad guy, this guy called Martel, who is this neo-Nazi, oh my god, I mean, it is just that. It is just like the cheese is dialed up to 11, and it's just like, it's so over the top and it's so goofy. It even makes the pantomime seem like high drama. I mean, I don't know if you have pantomimes in America, but you know what I'm talking about. But it is ridiculously hokey, to be honest. And again, it makes the movie feel very, very juvenile. And I mean, I guess you can't do like a serious drama, because obviously the budget is just not going to allow it, because it will just maybe look crap. But so they've gone for this kind of like jokey tone, but I think they went too far without making it a spoof. I mean, had this been more of a spoof, more of a deliberate comedy, maybe you could have, you know, lent into it a little more, but as it stands, it's kind of like the plot is very much like an Indiana Jones movie, but with a tone of a pantomime, with a real lack of characterization and an extremely low budget. So it's an acquired taste, to be honest, and I think if you can get over the fact that this movie is so kind of tonally weird, but you like those kind of Indiana Jones serial type kind of TV shows and movies and things, then I think there is an enjoyment factor to be had here. I was entertained with this movie, but it seems like I don't know who this was made for. You know, it's clearly a very low budget, but I don't imagine this would appeal to young people, and I think the tone is too juvenile for older people. And I think they could have done more with the characters. But, you know, it is still a fast-paced, you know, movie with lots kind of going on, bags and bags of ambition. A certain charm, I would say still, and it does have clear reverence for James Bond, Indiana Jones, and kind of properties like that. So there is some enjoyment to be had if you can get over some of the kind of the shortcomings that I've mentioned. Now, how do I rate this movie? I have to be honest, I can't say this is an above average movie because its shortcomings I feel really prevent it from me saying this is an above average film. But I do feel for certainly the very, very clear budget. I mean, this has got so much in the movie. I have to give it. I can't say it's a bad film either because it's just like, for clearly the money that they had, this is possibly, I think, a very good example of what you could do with a very low budget and still make it an entertaining movie with a clear narrative and that sort of thing, and different locations and you know, kind of good pace and things. So I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10, which is kind of my average score, with the proviso that this is a very low budget movie, so go in expecting that. 5 out of 10, which is an average score for me. I think it was pretty good for the kind of the extremely low budget this film is. Have you seen it? Would you see it? Please leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.